Shalom and welcome to Superheroes for the Messianic Lifestyle here on lamnetwork.tv, where we interview people who who have been walking the life of Torah for a while now to give you hope that you're not alone in your understanding that God still cares about his commandments and still considers them the standard of a holy life that he wants us to live by through the lens of the finished work of Yeshua the Messiah. My name is Darryl Weinberg of the Light to the Nations Messianic Ministries, and I am honored to be your host. Well, this afternoon, we're now in daylight savings time, so everything just kind of jumped forward. It's 6 o'clock here, but it's still light outside. Praise the Lord. I have the privilege of interviewing a young man who I just met, but he comes highly referred from someone else that I interviewed back in the fall. And this man has a fascinating testimony of how he came to faith. And also, he's got a fascinating line of work that he does that I'm sure he's going to want to get into. And so I want to introduce everybody to Josh Truex. Welcome, Josh.
Shalom, everybody. Thanks for having me, brother. Appreciate it.
It is good to have you on board and good to talk. So just before we started the show, we were talking a little bit about your health business that you're in and how you are helping people get their bodies fixed up because everything is out of alignment pretty much in the world and in with nutrition and everything else that's going on, how they're polluting the atmosphere. And so you're working really hard in order to help reverse that. And you've got quite a community of people that you're dealing with here. That's really exciting.
Praise Yah. All glory to Yah. It's been quite the journey, and it's amazing to see him work when you truly just submit. So that's really where I feel everything has been right there. I feel like for quite a while, and then when you fully submit, you see the change and the transition.
Now, you weren't always walking with the Lord, so why don't you tell us a little bit about that? You said your mother is Canadian. She was from New Brunswick, and you lived there for a while. But where did you grow up?
So I was born in Arizona, but my father retired from the military during that time. I think 6 months old, I left Arizona, and my dad went to work for the government. So I basically moved to Vienna, Virginia, right outside of Langley. I lived there till I was 18, 19 years old before moving out to Palmdale, California, Lancaster, to actually pursue drag racing. That's what I did before this. I've kind of always worked with mechanical things or working with the body in mechanical ways. But yeah, that's I can continue, or you can just ask another question. Sorry, I didn't know if you want me to continue there.
No, keep going. I want to kind of get the background. So you bounced around a bit, dad being in the military. That happens a lot.
Yeah, so that was my sister's kind of journey. Was they got the whole front end of that. I kind of caught the tail end of my dad's career. So he retired from the military. They were overseas in Okinawa, then Omaha and everything. And then when they went to Arizona and Tucson, that's kind of when I came and he said he was finished. And so I almost had most like an only child kind of raising. My sisters weren't exactly around. My older sister's almost 13 years older than me. So I'm the youngest and the baby boy. I was raised in Christianity my whole life. My parents are like scholars of the world, but I always say that it's through a different lens than what I see right now. It's been quite amazing with that though, because I was raised so heavily, sometimes 6 days a week in the church, but it never connected. I always knew my moral boundaries, and I always knew I better get my act together with certain things. If I push those limits, I would feel the things in my life come around me. So I was very aware of things, but I had no tangible connection with the word. Everything was just, oh, it's this and that. But for me, it was like the answers weren't there. And especially with what I do for a living, in the chemistry world and things like that, of working with the body, it's got to be precise. Everything with Abba is precise. I mean, it's only the world that gets us to consider it being inconsistent or something that's not stable. We know Abba is strategic, like it's a perfect strategy and utter precision. So
so you had your prodigal son years, as it were.
yeah.
So
Mhm.
what kind of triggered that? Where was the disconnect? I mean, you grew up in the church, but you never had that personal encounter, I guess. So you kind of went off and did your thing. And where did that lead you?
I mean, everything I was growing up with was like flag banners running up and down, what my parents called spirit filled and everything. And I just never felt like it was. I mean, it was more, it wasn't a show because you could tell like it was real with people and things like that. And most of the people in there felt like they were living it to the T, they felt like they had it right and everything. But I'm just like, why don't I have this overwhelming sensation that these people do? And so when I think I was like 16 or 17, and this guy went flying by my mom's car in a turbo race car kind of for the street. And I immediately was like, I want that. So at 18, I had started working for a guy online, and basically he started selling more products. So he needed me to come out there. So in an instant, my boss upset me at work, and 7 days later, I was living in California with this guy that I had never met before to build race cars, and I freaked my whole family out. Um, my mom sent my older sister with me to make sure everything was okay because my mom moved from Canada to Riverside, so she did this kind of parallel thing in her life. And when I got there, I was like, where did I move, Mom? And she's like, I told you I lived in Riverside. You moved to Palmdale, Lancaster. What were you thinking, boy? Like you moved out there from because I get out there and I'm like, I'm a little white kid surrounded by, and I was always like, I had all, diverse friends growing up and everything. I was very like the one white kid most of the time, even though I was in nice areas. I was big into basketball. So I always chose to be around, a certain crowd. And typically, like the crowd that I played with wasn't white kids when it came to basketball and stuff. So, and that was always my best friends and everything were, so anyways, I mean, it really, I don't remember where I was going with that, but growing up in that's kind of like part of the story though, because it's what sent me out. I was always in this group that was either going to push me to be into athletics. And I realized quickly, like it probably wasn't going to be what I thought. And I thought this racing thing was going to be the next best thing, and moving out to California where I was at was going from like all black friends to all like, it was really like a racist area I was in. I was very uncomfortable. I didn't go anywhere for Walmart was the highlight of my week. It was such a culture shock to me. Like I said, I was the one white kid pretty much playing ball all my life in most of my adolescent years. And then to move to this place, I was like, get me out of here. And so we were there for 2 years, and then we moved to Vegas to pursue, we were drag racing professionally. This guy was really big in the industry. I was getting into it, and I moved to Vegas to basically, I built drag cars for 9 years in Las Vegas, and was still kind of whimsical, like in the church, you know what I mean? I really wasn't, it just wasn't something that was connecting. Like, it's just, I didn't care to read the word. It was like, nobody could explain it right. Everybody had this, it was kind of like health was for me until I started to really figure it out. It's like, that's the way coming to Torah is, I think, for everything. It's like, you realize the paradigm in whatever area of the world you're in is not like it's completely incorrect, but it's a fabricated truth. Like it's kind of like something that the worldly ways has evolved it into, whether you're talking my career or your career or anything. There was, when you come to things, it seems like everybody's kind of there going, wow, wait a minute. Whoa, why were they telling me that this isn't the way that I should be going? And why am I going to church now? And then if I say something that I'm curious about, is there such a, it was like a spiritual, immediate kind of combative side that would come up. And I'm like, why am I always getting this reaction? But it wasn't until we were at our second to last church, and they had the thermometer up on stage, and they needed, I think, $12 million to build this new auditorium or something like that and do everything they were going to do. And they raised it in like 90 days.
Wow.
And I'm thinking, why are we building all this stuff in the rest of the world? You've got 20,000 people in the aqueducts of Vegas underground that are homeless. They have huge cities under there. And we're doing all this stuff around the world. And you just pulled $12 million from your, and that's nothing against them, but we went to one other church. And after that, we just left the church entirely. We just stayed at home and decided if we were going to worship, that this was going to be something that we did with the Most High, and if you want me to pause at any point, feel free to interject.
Yeah, it's your story.
Yeah. We go to the last church, and we like this one because it had like 5 more campuses. So I'm like, well, at least they're spreading this out. They're not, compacting everything into like mega church type stuff. And after that, when we left, we started going home, and I went from drag racing. And then when I left Vegas to go back home after me and my ex of 7 years split up, and my career came to a head. It was like Abba did a complete revamping of my life. I went back to my parents. I hadn't seen them for 10 years, really. I went back and, short of being with them for a couple of weeks a year or something, I never really got to see him. So I just was like, I'm going to go home and stay for as long as I need to be with my mom. My mom's my best friend. My dad, love him to death. He's amazing. And so I go back with them and just got to hang out. And I decided to go get a personal training job. And so that's where that side of my career, where I pretty much is the beginning of my health and fitness career and everything in 2010. I had been into health and fitness, a high level athlete. I had played like 3 to 4 sports my whole life, but I never really did anything with it. So I got into personal training, and I'm going to be honest, for more of like a self glorification kind of thing, where it's like, you can be like the buff guy and, things like that, whatever, you know what I mean? Everybody's got their, plus I like to just be a jungle gym rat, like always jumping around and being crazy. And I like to jump real high. So I was like, this fits. And in going into that, I basically did really well, ended up at the top of membership. And, I realized I couldn't make any more money with that, it wasn't going to satisfy my need. And I wasn't really trying to sell memberships out of 24-hour fitness. So I went into personal training again from, I started personal training in West Virginia. I was only there with my parents for like, maybe a year. And then I moved back to Vegas in 2010, 24-hour fitness for about a year, and went in quickly into personal training, and was the top guy in the company. And so my boss went over to this mega resort gym called Lifetime Athletic. Some of you might know it. They're all over. They're like 250,000 square foot resort gyms. They're just, it's amazing when you work there. You have like all this stuff. You can go in the pools or anything. It was really cool to work there. So he recruited me over there, and, right before he recruited me over there, I had met this girl who's now my wife, and she, I was still kind of with my ex when I met my wife, and it was at orientation for doing that membership job at 24-hour fitness. And I just knew something right away. It was the weirdest thing I had ever experienced. I'd never had that kind of moment in my life. And then the boss made her sit right next to me, and I just couldn't do anything because I was loyal to my ex at the time. But her shop closed down, her location closed down. And so I was the number 1 membership guy. So I basically like lobbied, like recruited her to come over so I could train her, and that we started dating from there. And then I got recruited to the big gym, and she was big into church. She was really big into church and everything in the Father her whole life, a lot more dedicated than I was in my party animal kind of Las Vegas days that she met me in. She met me at a very weird and bad time of my life. And so during that time, I really didn't even have the connection with Abba because I was too busy drinking, or, like just being a workaholic was my biggest addiction. And going into the big gym, now I was like the big guy. I was like now the top guy in this company, which was the biggest company in the world. And my team was like breaking all the world records in the world. So my head was getting like this big, especially in Las Vegas. So it was really easy to get me sucked into going down as I'm seeing my wife is trying to push me to go this way. And I'm like, I can feel the pull of the spirit going. And I always knew, I knew who my father was. I knew who my Messiah was. I would never deny them, but now I learned that I was every day. You know what I mean? I wasn't loving him the way that he asked to be loved. And
Right.
so I go through personal training, led me into my teams basically broke a record. And I only reason I say that was because you think that would be the pinnacle, right? Like I get all these, you know, respect and everything like that. But this big fallout happens with the boss who didn't even care about any of that. It was really like about him and accomplishing the first team to do that. And so I was like, I can't work for these companies anymore. This is nuts. Like this guy is just like didn't even care what we accomplished. He's just a money guy, and like we're changing people's lives here. And that's the moment when I realized there was a prophecy over me when I was a kid that I would do his work with my hands. And I never paid any attention to that. I still don't let it define me. But it's just funny how I started going into personal training, and then I went into what I've done more than anything in my life is they call me Muscle Whisperer Josh. I can't take credit for that name. That's just my friends made it up. But it was my whole branding for my last company and what I still do it today. But was developed my own physical therapy techniques. I've taught doctors and other LMTs and massage therapists and stuff. I've traveled the country for 3 years with my wife doing it, and even worked in Central America at one point doing it. So, but during this time, I got to shift from Mr. like basically kind of like a playboy attitude, not for any like bad word or whatever, but like that's a word in Vegas of somebody who's like just it's a word that you're trying to put on an image of something that you're really not wanting to be. That's what all the guys at the strip and things like that's what they're called and stuff. And I just realized like this isn't me. I don't want to be a Vegas boy. I didn't grow up here. I always tried to help the kids get out of that kind of mentality. So I was like, I felt like I was still holding the Father's moral code in a certain way, but I wasn't really giving him any credit or glorification. I wasn't giving all glory to Yah like I try and do now on everything. So I leave this and I got to go basically from that to a private gym where we worked for a while. Long story, longer. We go from there, we go back to, I got to go work from home doing my same physical therapy stuff. We did it there for a while. And once I found out we were pregnant with my son, this is when it all started to change, because I remember like kind of arguing with my mom about circumcision. And because it was right before my son was going to be born. And I'm like, why? I'm going to have a boy. Like, why would I not do this? Why does the blood still, why does the K2 levels, the vitamin K2 or the K1 levels that causes clotting to increase? Why does they still spike in a boy on the 8th day and not the girl? And it goes away after the 8th day. Why, Mom? Why? This doesn't make any logical sense to me. I have to discern this the way you told me to follow Messiah as he walked. You told me to watch his apostles and see the things they did. You told me to track all the habits. And I look at like Zipporah and Moshe. That's pretty intense when you see what you see in scripture. Why wouldn't I do this? Why wouldn't he take the K1 level away, Mom, if he didn't care that we did it? And so and I remember distinctly, I'll never forget this. I was working on a client. I had a Pilates table, and that's what I would like work and do my physical therapy on. And I was working on a client, and I was listening to music, probably some bad music I shouldn't be listening to. That was when that all started to change too. And I just stopped and I'm like, Father, I've only studied science. I've never truly studied you. And I'm just going to study only you. And if you're going to take my memory in any way, I want to know everything before you do. Be careful what you ask for. It's the first video I clicked on was talking about pagan origins and different things. And, nothing to rebuke anybody who's currently still saying this name or that name or whatever. I really don't care about that. I'm just happy people are saying his name, but in any way. But I started seeing all these symbolism and everything in this one video. And I'm like, oh my goodness, like it was in front of my face this whole time. And I don't know. Only thing I don't put words in his mouth. He tells us in Yeshayahu Isaiah that his words and his thoughts are completely different than ours, and ours are not his. And I used to say like, oh well, where's my thoughts if they're not from you first? Boy, that's not true. But it's like I guess he knew. The only thing I can think of is that I was going to be just super truther and hook, line, and sinker, he got me. And because it was like an onslaught of just a barrage of info from that point forward. When I went out, I remember I finished my session, I walked out, and I had listened to I did 4-hour sessions, and I used to be like, oh, I'm doing this for the mitochondria and I'm so smart. And then later I felt like Abba was like, oh yeah, you're so smart. You got 4 hours with people, huh? You set that up, huh? And I'm like, wow, I got 4 hours to minister to people and like to talk with them, and they can't go anywhere. This is great. And then I'm like, you wouldn't believe how many clients were like, Josh, if you couldn't do the work you do on my body, I don't know if I'd come here, because you are out there, man. I'd hit them with all these things in the world and scripture, and they're like, I don't know. My head spins every time I come here. But he blessed us to do, that work. I'll take a drink of water real quick.
Yeah. That's quite fascinating.
Yeah. His story is quite interesting, right? But from there, I walked out and told my wife, I'm like, look at this. This is his name. I was like, why? I'm like, look at these passages. Why did we never even pay attention to this? It like says, what is his name and his son's name, if you do know it?
Yeah.
I don't know it, and then I'm like, she immediately, my wife, I'll tell you what, we could buck heads on everything simple and it wouldn't matter, because she's never, ever, there's never been a draw on the line in the spirit with me and her on the biggest subjects in life. Like this thing, like coming to Torah, like all the different things. She's just like, yep, babe, you're right. We're doing it. Nope, this is real. We're doing this. Okay, Sabbath, cool. How do we do it? And we messed it up. I remember we're like, well, we can't cook, so let's go out to eat. And then you go out. I was read it again. I was like, oh, that's terrible. We're not supposed to buy or sell. And then they're working. Like, how silly. We can't make them not rest, and we're resting, So it's just, and everybody has different convictions on the way it goes. I'm sure everybody who watches this knows the whirlwind that coming, there's no red carpet for Torah. It's you bear your reproach, because immediately he tells you their sin will be their reproach. And boy, is that true, because it immediately stands up and rears its head at you, and you can't do anything but think about like, when you come to Torah, there's no more gray area of just kind of walking away and acting like you did the right thing when in your heart for sure that was not the right thing. So but I mean, I always, you can see even on 2011 and 12, I had on my first Instagrams, it said his work through my hands when I was doing physical therapy. My mom told me, she was, early in that career, I've done more than probably like 20,000 hours of that. That's why I say I've done more of that than anything else. But in that, she told me about like, you had a prophecy that you would do his work with your hands. And I'm like, no, I didn't. And she said, yes. Like when you were 10 years old, I guess this lady came to our church and everybody thought she was crazy because she was, speaking prophecies, but she prophesied. She started saying that our pastor, who was in a really bad place in his life, was going to be with this woman, and whatever she said, it happened that way exactly. So when she said it to me, my mom said it really made her listen, because she brought up like, you love basketball, but you're not going to play basketball for a living. And my mom said I was like gritting my teeth, like, because I loved basketball so much and wanted nothing more to play in the NBA, which I surely don't regret that. But so, I mean, that was the disconnect that Abba brought in that immediately became tangible to me. I now had evidence-based, facts to apply to these hunches on why it never clicked. Before it was just not clicking, but now I actually had like some evidence in my heart and in front of my face, and my wife was in agreement, which is huge, because she was trying to pull me out of drinking, trying to pull me out of all this stuff. And then Abba just hits me with a 3-week nervous breakdown. And I immediately was no longer a Vegas party boy. I mean, he brought me straight to my face. And for 3 weeks, I didn't sleep. My son was like maybe 8 months old. I couldn't even say hi to him or nothing. Abba let me work. I don't even know how he let me work. But when the sun would go down, I went into sheer terror. I was like, going on drives every night for like 3 hours, like trying to calm down. I couldn't calm down. Now I realize it was major magnesium deficiency, but you know, that was the self-induced side of it. But the spiritual side he made me go through, oh boy, you know. And then at 3 weeks later, he snapped me of it. Boom, liquor was gone out of my life. Now this is my Nazarite vow. This is my no drinking. This was 2 years ago of just completely 2 years ago. I mean, I was still having wine with people, you know, like go to the feast and do this and stuff like that. And this was just my kind of not going to do it anymore, you know, whether or not people, you know, go into that with the Nazarite vow or anything. But that's just personally what led me to that, ending that chapter in my life completely and just saying, you know, if we drink anew.
So what was, I mean, you grew up in the church and you knew about cultural Christianity. What was the real trigger? What was the catalyst that finally led you to say, we've missed the boat on this and we need to go back to the commandments? In the book that I just finished writing, I talk about in Jeremiah 6:16, it says, come back to the ancient paths and, you know, walk in them and you will find shalom. And for each person, it's different. So what was that for you? When did the light go on?
That was really, I was very blessed that it just kind of was a very cut and dry, where I said that prayer. There was no connection. There was really like nothing. I never questioned that it was real, but nobody could ever speak to it to me. So I'm like, if you guys are the highest powers of authority here, as far as like it, you know, bringing this to me, then when I went into it and the fact that he showed me something that I was like, look, this makes sense. I have a feeling in my heart right now. I can read the word and I actually want to. I read it from front to back for the first time in my life and I had passion with it. You know, he immediately showed me, I knew the word. I knew all the one-liners and all the stuff like that. That's basically what I knew, but I knew enough of the word to where I was thinking I had enough to contrast. Like, why don't I have these feelings? Why don't I have these driving force? Why would I choose darkness more than light? I don't get why I'm doing these things. And now I confess to Abba when I ever have anything that persists in my life. Like, I'm like, David, Father, like it's before you. He tells you that the sin is before you. Like we're here to do it, but I never even cared to do that back then. And that's what happened when he knows I'm a nerd. Like, you know, I was a big athlete, but I always say I was born with the wrong outside because I'm really like, sit me on the computer or video games back in the day and study something and whatever. If you can hook me in, I'm going to be, chomping at it until there's nothing left. So there was no joy. I saw my parents and everything, but I'm like, why is it literal like hell on earth in my house every Sunday? And this is supposed to be our great day. And every time Christmas rolls around or any of these days, like why is it literally like you guys are going to get a divorce? The kids are going to be like running away. And as we got older, that's what happened. My sister would dip out and bounce out of town, and my other sister would just freak out and run away, and my family would be just like, and I'm the kid, I'm the little guy, so I had to deal with this bubble boy kind of thing. That's the main thing that made me just irritated with all of the word and everything. I was just like irritated with it because that's the representation I had been given my whole life. And then in an instant, he gave me the craziest amount of joy, I could ever imagine. And I'm like, this is real. This is so real. And all it took was him saying, this is my name, no matter which way people say it. It's like, I went through all of the different things saying it. So in one way or another, like just learning those and then learning the variation of things and, Benjamin and Sibylla trying to say different words, like you realize like, that culturally we're probably not that different from the people back then. And the things that we fight about now are arguably what they were arguing about in a way back then, and the truth is the longer you get into Torah, the more you keep your mouth shut, the more you wait, the more you want to hear what somebody else says, the more you're a person in opposition becomes your best study partner, but all of it is to find the joy that it is to seek him, and I never had that. And not only did he give me that joy, but he did it my way. Like, it's like he gave me the desires of my flesh, but he waited for his timing and everything. But he was like, here, like he gave it to me the way that fit me. And that's what said to me, like, this wasn't some generalized thing. This was a custom package that just hit my heart exactly how it needed to. And it overwhelmed me with like love and compassion. And the more that I started doing these things, like I tell my mom, I'm like, read Deuteronomy 28, Mom. It still applies. I don't have the curse in my life. If I mess up, I get the reproach. If my life has problems, I did something, or I have a spiritual opposition or something, whether it's generational curses. But once you process the word enough times and you do these things he tells you to in Jeremiah with your grandfathers and things like that, when you break these spiritual ties and you live your life through obedience, which is the true breaking of the spiritual ties, and you show that your works declare your faith, and they attach, completely together, then it's like, it's gone, Mom, Dad, it's gone. You don't have the things you told. My mom said, my wife can't stand it. She's like, your mom says you're cursed every time. When we would fight, because we were still doing Christmas and everything when we first got together. And of course, my wife got to experience the traditional family blowout, and she's like, your mom just says you're cursed all the time. No wonder you guys are cursed. And then we learned that the word tells you, in a very simple way. See this part over here in Deuteronomy 28 that's like that big, and the other part that's like this big.
Yeah.
It's like pay attention to that little part.
3 times as many verses for the curses as there are for the blessings there.
And that's the thing. If we don't pay attention to the Tanakh, I tell my mom, I'm like, the Torah is just instructions. It's like statutes to your laws. You have to you just like, oh, Sabbath. Okay. What's that mean? And then we look at Messiah, and I told my mom like a couple months ago, I'm like, you are the reason I'm in Torah. And she's like, what? And I'm like, you told me to watch my Messiah like a hawk and his apostles after him to determine the things that I could verify the way that I would in anything. I do PhD research analysis for a living. Okay. I study the greatest minds in what I think is, the greatest minds in science all the way back to the 1800s. And my job is not to passionately study my bias. It's to openly study all possibilities and destroy what's not enduring. You have to test it and hold fast what's good, but you can't truly test something if you have your emotions involved. And I had to truly look at it and say, I don't think that's right, because my Messiah is the one telling me that you're not telling me the truth. And it's not because he says, even anomia, what does it mean? By your own ignorance. It doesn't just say like you have to be aware of this, and if it wasn't painted for you perfectly, then you're stuck with it. It says even if by your own ignorance. So he says his people perish. Why? Not pestilence, famine, or the sword. Lack of knowledge, because they forgot my Torah. But that last part is always left out. It's never spoken about in church. When I was in church, just the lack of knowledge. Make sure you read the word. But we'll just keep reading that verse and we'll understand like what part of the word we should be really reading too, but it's really amazing to watch when I've pumped the brakes with my mom and I fasted and prayed for her and done my best to like put my flesh to the side. And, I don't like to bring up fasting other than like something like this, because it's encouraging to other people who don't know the power of it yet. But when you loose the bonds of your flesh for somebody else, like, don't fight them in the spirit realm. You're losing. You're going to lose every time. Take it to Abba. Sit back with your spiritual popcorn and watch him work. His word is fierce and he will never let you down. And when I stopped trying to be this, I was in Vegas. This is the thickest leather skin you could probably evolve in most of the world. For almost 20 years, I was there. And I was the top corporate personal trainer in the world at the time. So I had all these billionaires coming to me like, you're the best. I want to train with you. And I'm like, I would not like you and you would not like me. You're going with Brian. But like you see this level of things, like when I was in the midst of all of that there, it's like working with casino owners and all of these different things, like the influences of all this stuff. Like I had to learn the game, and I didn't want to learn the game like this. I didn't want that game. I mean, the movies and the hangovers and all these things that people see, and they're like, that's not real. I'm like, oh, that's a normal, regular night in Vegas. Let me tell you. And many people live those dangerous nights where my friends go and they're like posting, oh, I'm going to Vegas, I'm going to go. I'm like, please stop. Please stop walking by the alleys and acting like you're on Las Vegas Strip and you're fine. And that, you know, you can just play with these kind of environments and think that you'll never run into an issue. And it's not true. But that skin became a mouth and an arrogance on me that I had to really have Abba humble me, especially when I came to Torah, because I'm like, I'm not selling them a Bentley they can't afford or a Mercedes they can't afford. They should take this. And I pushed my mom into oblivion because she tells me every time I talk to her that I make her head spin. But now I've learned to just listen and ask questions. Like when I would sell something to somebody, you have to ask questions, let them speak. You don't talk, and you make them admit whatever you're trying to you know, convey to them. And so the power of fasting when you're in a spiritual battle for yourself is one thing. If you really want to see things work around your life and somebody's in, you know, what better way to lay your life down for somebody too? And like for a whole day of staying in prayer and fasting for, you know, with the Father for your child or your husband or your friend or your loved one. And my mom has had, I've seen her talk about the Sabbath and the commands and just telling how much he loves her and wants her to know the first love, like you said, brother. You know, I'm like, what is he telling you? You guys are studying Revelation. Why would he tell you to go back to your first love? You guys are stuck on Messiah. It's got to be more. Messiah's telling you this. He doesn't say, come back to me. You know, he tells you to go back to his first love, your first love. And I'm like, and then like I tell her, like, take John 3:18 through 21 and change out light for Torah. For light came into for Torah came into the world and men chose darkness rather than Torah because their deeds were evil. I'm really good at backwards. Their deeds were evil, you know. But you know, and then it says like, you know, men don't want to come to the Torah because their works would be reproved. You would have, and that's where I tell her, like, you have to understand the synonymous nature of Scripture is like Proverbs 6:23, and seeing, you know, it's the commandment is a lamp, but the Torah is the light. OR in that word is literally light in the Hebrew, to my understanding. I mean, somebody out there could be like, you don't know what you're talking about, but it's built into the words, you know, to my understanding in my studies, and it's like the light. We see it all through, even truth. Psalm 91. It's like, do you understand why the world isn't seeing? If Psalm 91 is so protective of everybody, just because, then why didn't it create the effect that we know it should have, with the truth being the shield and buckler? Unless people aren't understanding what the truth is in that statement, you know, and like, do you,
you know, there's a lot of people who, when what we're dealing with in the world, COVID, you know, 3 years ago, and everybody was claiming Psalm 91, and yet the church absolutely got ravaged.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons is because it's not walking in obedience. And I was speaking at a Pentecostal church a number of years ago. Pastor is a good friend of mine. He wasn't there that day, but I said, you can't claim something under the blood that you haven't repented of. And so, you know, you've got the Pentecostals, you've got the charismatics running around saying it's under the blood, it's under the blood. But if it's in disobedience, if it's in violation of Deuteronomy 28, 1-14 is all about the blessings. We want to stick on that. But 15 through 68, 3 times the number, is all about the curses. And the reason why the curses are 3 times as long is because God really has to reinforce to us that, you know, if you step outside, then it's not going to go well. And it has not gone well for the church. And listen, we know that we're going to step into the book of Revelation at some point. We don't know exactly when that's going to happen. But what's always fascinated me, and, you know, I've been in Messianic ministry for 25 years now, is that in Revelation 12:17, it says that the dragon was angry with the woman, and he went after her offspring, or the remnant. And how do they define it? It's those who keep the commandments and hold to the testimony of Yeshua. Notice how John says that it's those who keep the commandments first. That's the remnant. And so Satan is, you know, he's prowling around. Well, he's not prowling anymore. He's on a rampage, and you can see that there's havoc being wreaked in the world right now. But those who cling fast to Messiah and hold to and who are obedient to his commandments in these end days are not only going to rise above the chaos that's out there, but we are going to flourish in these end times. And those who have ears to hear and eyes to see are going to go, we need to get back to that.
Yeah. Well, there's a powerful thing you said right there too, because there's a lot of people, when I ask my mom about the 10 Commandments, right? And my mom and dad, I tell them, I'm like, it's sad that you've been deceived to believe that this is done away with, when the very last thing Messiah says to the other virgins is, turn away from me. I never knew you, you without the law, even by your own ignorance. Yeah. So it's just how they've gotten her to take away the very commandments that I'm like, you guys live the Torah. You live the commandments. You just don't want to admit that you want to say that the Messiah is master of the Sabbath. Well, of course, you believe in John 1, everything was made through him. Why wouldn't he rest on the seventh day? Did he start the week out and just rest right away? I'm just like, this paradigm doesn't make sense in my head, where it's like, we have 7 days, right, Mom? She's like, yes. No, okay. Did he start right away? He was already resting. Would he just take the first day off, or is he going to, wait it out and see it? And it's like, I'm like, even if you say that the Sabbath is on whatever day you choose, then isn't there some other instructions, some other details you can see in this? And what I was going to say, it's interesting you brought it up. Revelation in the end time study is one of my favorite things. It's like the remnant in Revelation 11 and 12, that word used is loipos. It's actually the same word used for the other virgins in Revelation, or in Matthew 25. The other virgins who came and were turned away. It's in Revelation 11, 12, and Matthew 24. So we see that you have two sets of commandment keepers in the testimony. But what's the difference when you look at the Kodeshim, or the saints, in Revelation 14? The Hagios, the background of that word, the feast keepers, it seems like. It's like the only difference we can see, that you're saying, look, he's even saying, who's going to prophesy in his name, do works in his name, and be rejected? Right. Obviously, these aren't atheists rolling up there and saying this. It doesn't make any sense. So contextually, it's like, there's still those who believe they're doing it right, who Abba is going to check. And that's the thing. If you don't have these two groups that are there that both think they're doing it right, and there's no draw in the sand for it, then for me, Abba just like kind of told me, like, if there's not a group of righteous, then how does the other group who wants to fight the paradigm, my paradigm, how do they see the difference? How is there any difference? What's going to shift their paradigm to the real one? And that's kind of everything we see when we go into like my health journey. I was in personal training. I was known as muscle whisperer guy because I worked with the top bodybuilders in the world, which I can't even believe what my eyes were exposed to. It's that whole industry. And now I look at their stages. There's straight up fallen angels on both sides of them, and Zeus and all these different things that I'm like, whoa, man, I can't even believe this. But I worked with the top guys in the world, a lot of them, and still very good friends of mine. I still try and witness to them. And a lot of them are like, whoa, this is pretty wild, And I tell them, I'm like, you don't think this is very dysmorphic to get up here? And I love bodybuilding. It was my whole life, but you don't think it's like a way of you having to put yourself out there when that's supposed to be retained for something very special? If you're going to be buff, that's great. But then you can like really blow your wife away when you marry her, and she's the only one who ever got to see you take your shirt off like that. It's like, that's, I think how special that would be. All those muscles that you trained so hard for, and then you like kept them for your wife. I mean, I know it's really hard. They can't wrap their head around that, but I went from that into Abba took me out of it and put me into more. We started traveling the country for 3 years, and I would go city to city and post online, and we would do like, 40 to 50 hours in each city. And I just got to like, I had women who came in who were literally in like the porn industry who show up, and I'm like, what do you do? And we're starting to talk, and she's tatted from head to toe. This was the most powerful session I think I ever had. And why Sarah is always like, you've got to get back to doing that. Even if you do this work, but she loves when people come over, because this girl was involved in, like I said, in the adult film industry. And we start talking, and she starts telling me how through my Instagram page, she started to know like the name of Yah. She started to pray different. She started to change these things. And she said that like it was really putting conviction on her, and that like just that session of talking to her and everything had completely shifted like the way that she saw the world, and what she was doing was no longer this you know, a lot of these people in this think that they're doing some kind of artwork, and that was her understanding. And then that shifted like completely. And I don't know what she's doing now, but I mean, those types of situations would happen just because, you know, and we continued to travel. We did it, like I said, for a few years before finally settling down in here to the Ozarks during, you know, the whole pandemic in the world, basically, whatever you want to call that. Basically, that shifted everything from, obviously, Abba took me working 50 hours a week, touching people, to in a second, I moved here to Southwest Missouri, and he ripped me very quickly from that into what we do now is the helping people heal their metabolism, basically the root cause kind of protocol approach. And we manufacture all of our supplements here in house to ensure that it's all scripturally clean and we don't have to worry about anything in the markets and you guys having to wonder about that kind of stuff. But that was the biggest thing in Abba. Like, I had tried to do what we are doing now my whole life, and I was very good at what I did in the past, but he never let me. Even with now, like what I feel like I've been asking him for and stuff, I'm, you know, just waiting on his timing, because I know it's always better. He'll let you sometimes when you ask for it, get it ahead of time, and then you could mess it all up. And then now I've just restricted myself from doing that, because when we moved here, I went from making really good money and doing what I love to trying to do what I love but couldn't make any money. And I'm like, I don't have anybody. I guess you don't want me to touch people because of this thing, you know, that's going on in the world. And so I just started really deep diving studies. And like I said, all I've been doing is just PhD research analysis, trying to find the enduring studies, trying to find the truth about the metabolism in every step of the way, trying to glorify Abba. And through this is now, like, he's actually allowed us to work full-time from home and work full-time. I mean, I literally, all of my coaching is free. All of our consults, I do consults one a day pretty much through the week. I don't charge for any of this. You know, we have the coaching chat with over 500 people, brothers and sisters, pretty much all of them walking in the way, who lift each other up through sickness, through anything. And they're all much using the protocol that we do to help rectify this. Were you gonna say something?
Tell me a little bit, because I connected to you through Darryl. How did you connect with him? Tell us about that relationship.
So Darryl, it's funny because I've always enjoyed his music that he does for Yah, but like my son knows it as Yahweh. Like my little guy, he says it and he puts his hands up when he knows, and when he points at my iPad, he's always like Yahweh, Yahweh. Like, and I know that's when he wants to hear mostly Darryl's music and some Left and Right Ministries music here locally. So we always listened to his music, and in doing that, we kind of just always had it on in the house. And I prayed and asked that Abba would bring us together to where I could help him with his health. And not to say that he's got like health issues or anything, but this is my mission and my passion. So I tried to get it to where like I can reach anybody if possible. And so I prayed and through meeting through my buddy, who is like my little brother now. He's like the closest one to me in this walk. We always study together and everything. Through him, he basically had been on my protocol for a while, and we'd become close friends and everything like that. And so he was talking to Darryl about some stuff going on in their life, and just in a regular conversation, Darryl mentioned something, and he was like, "Come on, man, you need to, like, try Josh's stuff. You know, it'll really help." And so that's really how it started. He texted me his number and told me to reach out, and I did a consult with him and his wife, and that was really where it started, and we just became buddies and stuff like that. Brother D is awesome. He's very like firm in his belief, and he's a rock solid brother. You know, it is what it is with people like that. That's how I am with help and with health. And Brother D is you know, I love him mostly because of his tenacity. You know, that's why I immediately clicked with him and we became buddies, just because of the you know, his music. I automatically wanted to know him, just to hear more of it and see if he had any more music that he was doing, because that's kind of hard to find in this walk initially. Now we have a bunch of it over the years, but that's really where it was. I thought he was going to be just somebody I helped with health and stuff like that, and You know, then I was blessed to know that he told me, he's like, hey, I gave you a little shout out on your show. And then I was like, oh, that was really cool. I really appreciate that. You know, I wasn't expecting that. And so we kind of just been buddies since then.
Okay. Because you're a fair bit apart. I mean, he's up in New Jersey, so yeah.
That's just the benefit. That's just the benefit. I did all my videos that I did originally that people got to know me by in the community was through Adam on Parable of the Vineyard. So I kind of just threw that because he's, you know, people watch it and we were doing the feast together and everything. I kind of got through to people up there. I mean, the chat that we have, the fellowship chat on Telegram also, not just a coaching chat. So it kind of, there's people all over the world there. So in that, like, I was blessed. Like I said, Brother Joe, you know, I said, oh, he did a song with Brother D. So I was like, you did a song with Brother D, man. That's cool. Like, you should get me in touch with him. And he did. So there it was. It was awesome.
Okay. That's great. So we got a couple of minutes left. So how do people get in touch with you? I mean, you know, it sounds like what you're doing is revolutionary stuff, really. Deep diving into the workings of the body, and as the world system continues to turn against us, I mean, it's quite evident now that you cannot trust our medical system whatsoever. It's gone from do no harm to kill them off as quick as possible. You know what we're doing, and there are many other people who are with the Lamb Network who are involved in health in one way or another. How do people get in touch with you? How do people benefit by what you're doing?
So, I mean, the website is modern. It's Modern Roots Life, just modern, MODERN, Roots, ROOTS, and then life, LIFE.com. So, and the whole motto behind that is just teaching people to live in this modern world by going back to our roots as much as we can, basically through the word. But on the website, you know, we have, or you can just email me at josh@modernrootslife.com. And the website has my cell number. It has the chat that goes right to me. I'm fully available, you know, through the coaching chat or through you can click on the website. It has step 1, step 2, step 3. There's the free protocol. It has the free detox guide, the free consult. And then in the middle of that, you'll see the free coaching chat. So I try to make everything through the website to where you can get a hold of me right away. Like I said, I don't charge for it. It's all meant to be. Abba gave all this to me for free. So the only thing we have is, you know, stuff that with the supplements we make, but everything else, you guys come in, and whether you use it, please don't feel like you need to use the whole monitoring the chat. Like, just use it as a data. You can search it for anything, any question you have, just click search. Don't feel like you need to like use these things and get overwhelmed by it. I try and do that, but feel free to reach out if anybody needs any help. I mean, I study organic and molecular chemistry now. That's my main studies now. My background, like I said, was movement science and everything. I went up through physical therapy, and then into now is, you know, metabolic sciences and things like that around it, which is the truth. I mean, the root of all disease is energy issues, and energy issues are all a metabolism issue. And you can get into just the basic things. They demonize copper, and copper is the root. Messiah is listed as copper, you know, in the Hebrew Revelation, or brass, which is mostly copper. But copper is what runs every single gateway of your mitochondria. And the only way to suffocate it is to mix the iron with the mirror clay. And that's the main thing is iron recycles in the body and you can't get it out. You know, blood loss is the only way that iron leaves the body. So Satan knows this, in my opinion. And when you load somebody up with all the iron, telling the whole world they're anemic because you show them hemoglobin and ferritin tests that aren't relevant, and they're not even checking things that can actually read iron, which is crazy. Then you realize you stuff a bunch of iron into any one of us humans, and then it suffocates copper, and you cannot produce energy. Your body doesn't produce stress unless you can't produce energy. That's it. Nobody really likes to admit it's that simple. But in reality, if you look at my protocol, I'm not supplementing you to death. I'm just completing your diet because I know the soil and the agricultural system. I study all these things. They don't have the things in it that we think. We're looking at like leafy greens going magnesium, but there's not the magnesium count you think that's in it. And you think there's copper, but the copper's not in the things that we think it is.
Just on the phone with a friend of mine, and he produces colloidal silver, colloidal copper, colloidal zinc, exactly what you're talking about. And he's launching his own business to help out with that.
That's awesome.
We got about 1 minute left, and so where is the Father leading you from here? What's next for Josh and his family?
Right now, we're actually looking for property a little south of here. I had a wellness center in Vegas that we based on red light therapy and infrared therapy, but now I want to open a wellness center that is entirely based around like Torah lifestyle. So if people need to come and get a support lift, or if they're new in their walk, or the main thing is going to be health, of course, but all of the support brackets, teaching people how to eat right, farm to table, coming and doing, remineralizing baths, which was the number one therapy. It was called water cure up until the 1800s. It was the number one therapy there is. So doing remineralized baths with CO2 and doing certain temperatures, just in general, if people can just check their temperature, and if they're below 98.6, you should go heat your body up somehow. Hot shower, any kind of thing like that. A hot body will keep your metabolism high. But he's really just, I want to build something that in these times with what they're bringing, and I can see some other things, even with the pokey poke. If people just knew that it increases hepcidin, which is what tells your gut how much iron to absorb from food. It's why the cycles turn on with women and stuff throughout it and everything. And that's my main focus right now, is to see with what's coming up, the preventative measures, parasitic function, and things like that. That's what my herbal flush is based on, is to show people the truth about what they call it is a V. I don't even like the flag thing, so I don't know how you do that on this channel. But in reality, if we look at parasitic function and parasites, then we see a lot more of the workings of things going on. And that's pretty much it, though. We want a wellness center that will encompass everything. And when people get stuck, because that's what's happening, they're basically slowing our body down to where it makes it near impossible to get you over the hump into the other side. But I want to make something where if people are running out of
let me ask you this, and we'll end with this. Are you going to write a book?
That's actually, I can't believe you said that. So, I mean, I have been doing everything through that, the protocol, my blogs and stuff like that, and the Instagrams and stuff. But now, just recently, my mom was saying that she was like, you need to write a book. And, my mentor, Morley, has a book called Cure Your Fatigue. And he talks about the copper iron matrix and everything like that. And he's finally getting major traction in the world with all the big doctors and everything as well, too. The Mercolas and different ones like that, with their product lines and stuff, exposing the truth about synthetics. But in reality, the book is something that I think it just needs to happen for like anybody who really, there's no better than anybody. Once you just gain a certain amount of knowledge, you're only parallel to other people who have a different type of thinking. And I just would like to put something out there. And I'm really glad you said that. Thanks for the confirmation, brother. That's why we talk to our brothers and sisters, so he can. It's just something I would never really do unless I had somebody like you and my family and stuff saying, you know what, maybe you should collect this together and not just a protocol.
I just wrote a book, so I think everybody should write a book now.
Yeah, and I'm glad you say that, because that's the hard thing to grasp, and just saying everybody should write a book doesn't seem feasible.
All right. Josh, we have come to the end of our time. Thank you so much. I know we could do this for hours, and maybe we need to get you a show here on the Lamb Network to talk more about this stuff. It's been great talking to you. Thank you so much for sharing all of this wonderful information that the Lord is using you for. And we'll look forward to what you're going to do in the future. So remember, go to modernrootslife.com and check Josh out. Thank you, everybody, for joining us once again here on Superheroes for the Messianic Lifestyle. Shalom, Shavua Tov, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, guys. Bye.
We are richly blessed to bring you what we believe is the fullest, most diverse, yet up-to-date progressive teachings, discussion, and prayer programming you can find anywhere on this planet. Be sure to take the tour of the MessianicLambRadio.com website. I'm Susan Hoogie, thanking you for joining us on the Messianic Lamb Video Network.